This chorus founder built her chorus from nothing into a powerhouse in just 6 years with a pandemic in between by thinking differently. Stay tuned to find out how. Welcome to Choir Success, helping your choir survive and thrive in the 21st century. I have with me today Kirsten Oberoi, founding artistic director of the South Shore Children's Chorus, and we're going to talk about her keys to success. And if you find this content useful or helpful or interesting, please click on the like button. We're going to do one video every week, and if you'd like to be notified of more, please just subscribe and click on the little bell. And Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Busy as ever, getting ready for the new choir and school year.
Right. It's very seasonal, right? You've got nothing to do and then you got everything to do all at once.
I wouldn't say nothing to do, but sure, we have less to do.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, so tell the audience a little bit about your background. What made you decide to start up a choir like this? And it was about 6 years ago, am I right?
Yes, January of 2016 was when it was officially founded.
Gotcha. And what made you decide to do that?
Well, my background, I'm from Quincy, Massachusetts. So I am from the city that I founded my children's chorus in. It's where I grew up. I went to school there. I went to college, however, in San Diego, California. And in San Diego, I had some really, really great experiences, and I did my degree in music composition. I loved chorus the whole time. I had a very influential professor, Dr. Keith Peterson, and it sort of changed how I looked at different things and how I looked at leadership. And I just continued and wanted to do more. After school, I sang professionally. I worked for the San Diego Children's Choir, and I did a lot of after school and before school choruses and creating programs and things, which was really awesome and exciting. And then my husband decided that we should move back to Massachusetts because he was going to get a doctorate at BU in choral conducting. And when he did that, we came back to the East Coast and back to Quincy. And I got a job in the city with a children's chorus. And I realized very quickly how imperative philosophy is to success.
And culture and such.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily think it until you're in a place where you really don't mesh with the philosophy. And it doesn't mean that there's a bad person or a good person, but it just isn't the same goal at all. And that was my feeling in this position. And even though it was pretty high paying, it was pretty high profile, I decided to leave the position after a very short amount of time because I just really didn't see the philosophies that I had grown to have as an educator lining up with this organization. And after that, I got my job at the mall. Right. And, and I have nothing against working at the mall. I think it's great. And I actually encourage anyone who hasn't worked in retail or service to do so a little bit, because it's really nice for us choral people to get out into the real world and talk to real people who don't do what we do. It's really important. But as I was doing that, I said, well, if I can't do it my way, or if I can't do it somebody else's way, I'm going to do it my way. Right. And I decided to create the South Shore Children's Chorus, and we kind of went from there, and we built and built and built, and now the program has 4 different locations in the South Shore region of Massachusetts and serves approximately 150 students per year.
And one of the really interesting points for me, inflection points, right? So there was a moment where you decided, I can do this, and I want to do it this way, to do it my way, as you said. And then when you get to actually doing it, there has to be don't you require some kind of startup capital, or how do you get from I want to do this to I'm doing this now?
I'm not sure how I did it is the best way to do it, but startup capital, we had a tuition. And basically what I said was, I had founded it with someone else, and I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We are going to see who we get. We're going to charge tuition. If they can't pay, oh, well, they can be involved. I think that's great. They should be. but we're going to charge a tuition. And then I want to make by the end of our first, because we did, I did it almost like a trial, like TV shows do. They sort of premiere something in the spring and they see if people like it.
Like a pilot.
Sort of, yeah, that was it was our pilot program. So we went from January to May, and I sort of said, all right, I want to have a certain amount of money left over. So we have to get this many kids who are paying to make this much money. Any money we make over that, we can split and use as our payment.
Yeah. Okay.
But other than that, you know, we're not making anything for this pilot. And we didn't make very much more than what I needed, but I kind of got the ball rolling with that. And of course, we had to purchase things like insurance. Liability insurance is really important to have. I would definitely recommend anyone who's doing a startup, talk to somebody who's done it and think about that side of it. Talk to someone in legal if you can, who can give you those pieces of advice. Because if you're gonna have a bunch of kids meeting together, you have to have liability insurance. You have to cover your bases and have media release waivers, liability waivers, because you are typically in charge of their care. So there's some stuff there that you want to make sure you have. But the nice thing about choir is really all you need is people.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of, you don't have to buy a lot of fancy equipment or anything like that. I've heard for any small company, you know, yeah, you have a great idea, but first get an accountant and a lawyer, right? Like you sort of need those two things to get moving. And then recently you reached a milestone where you went full time, right? It's now your only job, if I'm not mistaken.
It's one of my many, but as musicians, we do a lot of things.
Very true. Yeah.
I still teach some private lessons, and I'm still finishing up at the restaurant. I was waiting tables a couple of times a week the past year or so, and really great. I actually really enjoy it. I love waiting tables. You just get to be with people, and you get to do something that's pulls you away from music just a little bit, which again I think is great, and I highly recommend. But yes. We did just approve a budget that has a salary for me, which is exciting. And so I am now officially like a salaried artistic director of the organization I made up out of my head. And that is a really, really cool feeling.
It's a huge milestone, isn't it? And so from those humble beginnings 6 years ago, what does the group look like now in terms of, you know, the number of people, the amount of time, the staff, kids, singers?
Yeah, so this fall we're expecting about 150 singers, give or take. That's where I think we're going to be. We are currently up about 35 to 40% in registrations than this time last year. So that's really good. And we haven't even started our rehearsals yet. Our rehearsals start on September 13th. So that's really good news there. We already have over 100 singers with us registered already, so we're rocking and rolling. I think that 150 goal is going to be pretty easy.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of staff, I have myself. I conduct the high school group, and I have 7 conductors who work with me, and they are probably some of the most fabulous people I've ever met in my entire life. They're honest, true. They have utmost integrity and love this mission very much. So they're amazing.
They're on board with the culture and all of that.
They sure are. And I would go so far as not only on board with it, but they help me to create it, to refine it, and they hold me to it when things get hard, because things get hard sometimes, and you start to question things, and they're always there to challenge me. And if we are as artists aren't challenged, we're not getting better, and we're not making the biggest impact that we possibly can. It's easy, and no one around us is challenging us, saying, you know, I don't think this is the best you can do. Then we're never gonna just move this field forward. So I'm grateful very much to have that artistic staff.
Right. It's like every board meeting, right? We have this difficult decision to make, and you got to go, well, our values say this, so this is probably what we're going to do, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I also have a fabulous accompanist. My accompanist that founded the organization with me last year, who's a dear friend. left to pursue some other opportunities. And so I just hired a brand new accompanist, and she's wonderful. And then I have an administrative team of 3. I have a work from home registrar. She's fabulous, and she answers all of the incoming inquiries from the website and deals with registration, helps parents with our registration software, makes sure our rosters are correct and whatnot, and deals with client accounts and all of that. And that's great. I love not having that on my plate. This is sort of the first year that I've really had it off of my plate, and that's just a really nice thing to not have to do anymore, because I've done it for a long time.
And then typically, like a startup will go through that, where at the very beginning it's everybody's doing everything and you're talking every day, and maybe it's just one person, but then when you get to a certain size, then you have structure, right? And so it sounds to me like you guys have got structure, and you've got, this person does this job particularly, are responsible for that, you're not doing it anymore. That's actually another huge milestone in the creation of any organization.
Yes, absolutely. And that's all sort of a little bit new this year. I keep telling people I've gone from being a manager of things and a manager of tasks to a manager of people.
Right.
And that's been a really interesting shift too in my leadership, and in making sure I do a lot of reading and thinking and journaling about leadership, because I really want to be the best, most honest and most integritous person that I can be. And some of that comes with a lot of self-reflection and recognizing, okay, now my role is shifting. And if my role is shifting, how do I need to shift to mold that role? And now that I'm more of a manager of people, it's very different, and it's challenging in its own ways. There's a lot of trust that has to happen. And when you've done that thing for 6 years and somebody says, okay, I'm going to get it done, and then you don't get like that immediate, it's done now. And I'm like, oh, I could have just done it in that time, but that's no way to live or treat people.
Exactly. The number of times I've heard people say, it's easier just to do it myself, right? It's kind of a bad sign. I mean, do you find yourself still getting dragged into the weeds every once in a while, and the temptation to micromanage people?
Yes, it's definitely a temptation. It's actually easier for me with the artistic stuff to not micromanage. But additionally, I've also known all of my conductors for a while.
Right.
So I trust them. I've seen them teach. I've watched them in the classroom. They know what they're doing. I can leave them alone. They'll be fine. The administrative stuff, it's harder for me to let go, because I have sort of crafted this culture, and letting that go, and the control freak in me, like, up until this year, I could have named you every kid on every roster.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now I'm looking at it going, who signed up? Who isn't signed up? I don't even know. I haven't been keeping tabs, because it's happening without me doing it, which is really neat, but a different kind of challenge.
No, I very much know the feeling. As things get big, you just can't do that. So I want to talk about location a little bit, and my understanding, my belief, even though I live on the West Coast and I don't really, I don't understand the East Coast very well, is that South Shore is south of Boston, right? So Boston's kind of the nearest big city, but in my head, that whole area is paved all the way from Boston down to DC or something, but but it's probably not true. No, it isn't. And so, first of all, how does it affect your organization to be where you are in space, right? So you're in South Shore. What is that like? What are the people there like? How does it affect how you do things and how you think about your organization?
That's a loaded question there, Tom.
Well, it's a big question for sure.
It's a big question. I think number one is, a lot of people think just because you're near a major city, that means that everyone has access to the opportunities that a major city has. Mm-hmm. But truly, it is not that way. I've recently connected with the executive director over at Boston Children's Chorus, which is a fabulous organization. And, we chat regularly, because we are serving 2 totally different communities. Yeah. Even though my headquarters in Quincy is only about 10 miles from where one of his rehearsal sites are.
Okay.
It's just a totally different group of people. And growing up there, I know that these people in the South Shore, they're working class people, 9 to 5s. They don't have time to drive their kid into the city for a rehearsal. And on top of that, the South Shore and the areas that we serve, each town, we serve about 25 towns, students from 25 towns, and each town has a totally different school system, a totally different socioeconomic status, a totally different demographic of people. And because of that, we really see a lot of this with our students. We see a really diverse group of students, and some of them have strengths here or weaknesses here, or we have students that don't have issues with tuition and students that can't pay any, or students that have a wonderful choir program at their school, and students that choir isn't even an option at their school. They don't even have a choir teacher. So what that results in for us is an extremely diverse group of students. And yes, I do mean that in the sense of their ethnicity and their culture, but also just in terms of their life experience.
Yeah.
Even students of similar race or cult background or religion come from wildly different experiences.
For sure.
So that's been like the neat thing about South Shore Children's Chorus is we're really not serving one demographic. We're serving just this wide variety of human beings that just all come together for this cool cause.
Right. It's very interesting. I mean, would you say that it's more, in all of those different ways, that it's more diverse than, say, in Boston next door, or is it kind of diverse over there as well? Just to find myself curious.
I don't know their exact student base. You know, from what I see is they do tend to have like a lot of diversity in terms of culture. But like, let's say a lot of them live actually in the city. So they might have similar experiences in the fact that their parents let them take public transportation. And that's how they get to school, or that's, you know, or they walk. And that might be something that sort of ties them together because they're from the same general area. But like, we'll have one town that has buses for high school students, and the town we're in doesn't have any school buses from 7th grade and up, and they have to take the public transportation bus. So even just in that, you know, you've got two really different worlds right next to each other. And I can't really speak to anybody else's demographic just because I haven't studied it. I don't know it. But I know that in my mind, it makes us feel really unique because of that.
Right. Well, I mean, your particular situation is the one that matters to you. So that makes sense. I'm curious about one other aspect. I know that as you can imagine, I'm in touch with a lot of children's choirs, a lot of choruses and such. And some of them do satellites and some of them don't, you know. And I think you guys do. And I wonder, when you were deciding to do that, what was your thought process and how is it working out for you to do satellites? Or maybe you should actually tell them what a satellite is, because they might not know. Nothing to do with space travel today.
Yeah, exactly. We get on a rocket every week and no, so we have our main headquarters in Quincy. And when I was thinking about building this organization, I actually sort of ripped it from San Diego Children's Choir. When I worked for them, they had a very similar model, and I kind of went, I like that idea. Pop, bing, because imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Thank you, South Shore Children's Choir. Love that group. Great artistic director over there, great directors, amazing people. But we decided to do our first one mostly because during after school hours, there is a lot of traffic.
Okay, yeah.
There is a considerable amount of traffic. So while on Sunday afternoons, when we bring our entire groups, all of the satellites together at an all-together rehearsal, it might take you from a satellite location 35 or 40 minutes to get to our headquarters. To get to our headquarters for 4:30 on a weekday would maybe take you an hour and 15 minutes.
Right, yeah. So really not practical.
Correct. But in not being practical, then who are we discluding from being in our program?
Yeah,
You know what
of course.
So that was sort of a big thing for me.
And so is it that you have satellites so you meet twice a week basically with everybody meets in their satellite and then they meet on Sunday?
Um, they meet weekly, they meet monthly on a Sunday.
Oh, okay, once a month on a Sunday. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And then they all perform together in their levels.
I see. Yeah, so on a map it looks very fragmented, but then every month you have a way of bringing everybody together. I mean, is that challenging? How does that go? Different, and also like they've all got different teachers, I would think, and so right, you got to bring them together under one.
They do. Luckily, my teachers at the youngest level and the 3rd through 6th grade level work together absolutely beautifully. They're on amazing teams of 3. They pick repertoire together. They work together to plan the all-together rehearsals, so they're all co-teaching really well. And not only that, they're wonderful supports for each other as human beings. And I think that that's really, really fabulous and makes a difference to the students as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, well, let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about kind of to me, one of the most interesting and important topics, which is the culture of the group. And I know that this is where you maybe think differently from some other people, right? So I really want to get into that stuff. How would you describe the culture of the group and where does it come from? What impact does it have? If you could kind of riff on that a little bit. I know people would be interested to hear.
Well, it sort of grew naturally. I didn't start South Shore Children's Chorus. I was only 24, 25 when I started South Shore Children's Chorus. I didn't have a lot of life experience or a lot of experience with different children's choirs. But I remember that first semester, our pilot semester, I was like, why would we audition them? We just want kids in this thing. They'll be fine. They can sing. They'll be fine. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And from that, I kind of thought, well, it's sort of a waste of time. Like, it's sort of a waste of time to audition them because if they're all going to get in anyway, like, let's just like put them in there. Right. And then that kind of grew as I had parents starting to say, oh, is there an audition to be in the group? And I said, no. And they were like, oh my God, I'm so glad. My kid loves to sing, but they won't audition for the musical. They won't audition for chorus at school because they have to be heard individually before they go in.
Oh, I see.
And when I started getting that feedback, I was like, I am more than happy to be the place for those kids. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm thrilled to be the place for those kids. And I have 2 or 3 students now who have soloed in front of 500, 600 people that those are the parents that reached out to me.
Right.
Because they had a moment to be comfortable. So, what South Shore Children's Chorus does that seems very simple to me, but is sort of a very different philosophy from a lot of choir directors is I just say yes. If they say if a kid says I want to sing in chorus, I just say, okay, come sing chorus. And there will be a lot of people that push back and they'll be like, oh, we don't have auditions, but we have voice placements.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that too, because you're still coming in and checking them at the door, right? That's still a gate in a way. They still have to come in and do the thing that they're looking to learn to do
before they get to
from you, before they've even learned to do it.
Yes, yeah.
And that to me doesn't make sense. And people are like, oh, well, I want to be able to hear their voice so I can be the best teacher for them. But if hearing their voice stops them from coming into your class, you can't even be a teacher for them. Mm-hmm. You can't, they're excluded. Yeah,
of course. It makes me wonder, I love the way you think about it and the way that you've set it up. What do you think so most groups, of course, have auditions. Why do they have auditions, right? Why did they not come to the same conclusion that you did? I feel like it's out of some kind of fear of something.
I think it's out of a little bit of fear if they don't know what to do. I have had students that come in and they don't match pitch.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That has happened to me more than once. I have had a student come in that doesn't know what voice part they sing. I
Right.
have students come in that don't know where their eyes go on the page. And I think a lot of choral directors are afraid that they can't fix these things in a group, or that that kid is going to feel like they're sticking out, or the other kids are going to make fun of them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you have a culture where somebody's going to make fun of somebody else in your group, that's on you to fix.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else is going to come from?
Right.
Right, exactly. So ultimately we have to take this traditional model and you really have to break it down. I start every year with my high school students, my 7th through 12th grade group, and I say, raise your hand if you have chorus at school. Keep your hand up if you have chorus multiple times a day at school. You know, we've got some of them, they have a really good program. And then I say, raise your hand if you don't have choir at all at school. It's not even an option for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like a third of my group raises their hand.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell everybody to put their hands down and I say, just because they don't have choir at their school, does that make them unworthy of singing in this group?
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because they grew up in a town that didn't have it. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with like socioeconomic status either, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have a great music program in a public school system that doesn't have people that have like a lot of money.
Right.
It's not even related to that. It's literally where they live and what their superintendent and town decides to put money into. So why would it be their fault if they don't know the answer to the question, if they don't know how to match pitch, if they don't know any of that? It's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I believe that they are worthy of learning that. And if you're in this room, the expectation is that you believe that they're worthy of learning that too, and that you're going to be a part of them learning that, because that's how you can give back, because you've been privileged in a way of having that opportunity, and you can give back that privilege by leaning over to the kid next to you and going, hey, do you know where we are? Do you need any help? I'd be happy to help you.
And if you're watching at home, does your choir do auditions? Just write yes or no in the comment along with the name of your choir or chorus. So let's talk more about culture. I feel like that is the meat of what is different and special about your group. What else comes to mind when you think about the culture of your group?
One of the things that's really important to us is we've never turned a child away for finances and inability to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of groups that maybe will have a tuition or they might have a sliding scale. But I really find it important that we include everybody and we don't boil people down to a number. What is on your tax return doesn't tell me your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know your story. And I'm not going to claim that that tax return can tell me your story. And who knows what trials and tribulations you've gone through. I mean, I think back to when I was 16 years old and my grandfather unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack and he had no life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, my mom, I remember, had to put all of his funeral expenses on her credit cards. And we had a really difficult year. She was a single mom in terms of that, but she had a good job. And I can only imagine that her tax return looked very different than her situation. And so when I look at our students, for me, I'm going to assume the best. I'm going to assume that if you can pay for this, or if you can pay any amount for this, that you are going to, and that you're going to ask for help if you need it, because that's what this world is based on. And so we have people apply for tuition assistance, and some of them apply for only paying half of our tuition. Some say, I can pay you $200, $100. Some say, I can't pay you anything. And all of them get a yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's really important to me. I like to think of it as radical inclusion. If you want to be here, okay. If you want to sing with us, okay, we'll figure out how. I have found rides for students. I have found money for students. I have found positions for students. And it's just, to me, it's just really important that we say yes. So many people think that the choral art is dying, but also the classical music and classical choral world also says no a lot.
That's very true, yeah.
In my mind, you can't complain about dying if you're saying no.
So I wonder if that relates to, obviously you've had some really, really great growth in the last 6 years. Maybe that's a part of it, but there's probably more aspects to it too. I'd love to know, why do you think you were able to grow so quickly to where you are now, even with a 2-year period off?
I truly do think it has to do with the mission, and it has to do with how we act with the community. People ask me all the time for tips about getting new singers. And I think the more and more I think about that, tips and tricks ain't gonna do it. You know, tips and tricks, you can have bring a friend night, and that might work. That might work for you. But if you truly want people to come to your program, to do your program, to be in your choir, you have to do a lot more hard work. And my artistic staff and I just came off of a summer retreat. We stayed overnight for a night in a big Airbnb, and we did a lot of hard work. We did a lot of hard communication with each other, answering some hard questions, asking some hard questions. Why do we do things like this? How does that make you feel? How can you be supported? How can you be challenged? And when you're doing that hard work and you're all agreeing on the same mission and you're asking why a lot, and you're only doing things because they make sense to you and your organization and who you're serving, the people will come. But if you're doing things because that's how it's always been done, or if you're doing things because you believe it creates really beautiful sounds on the stage, that's limiting you to a very narrow group of people that you're including. I remember after our spring concert, I had a 55-year-old woman come up to me and say, that's the first event I've been to that's over an hour in the past 10 years that I haven't been bored.
Oh, wow. And you connect that to culture and mission. Right?
Correct, because when I'm programming my concerts, we're doing upbeat, up-tempo, exciting music. Each piece is slightly different. I don't do themes. Every piece is different. I'm putting different groups in different orders, so there's always something new happening. There's always something exciting happening. Because quite frankly, yes, we live in a world of technology, and yes, everything moves really fast, and no one can focus. But no one can focus if it's boring.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, I have trouble. I really like choirs. I really like classical music. I have trouble sitting through a long concert of slow. Long concerts of slow don't do it for me. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I know my audience. My audience isn't full of classical music appreciators.
Right. Yeah.
My audience is full of parents who want to see their kids smile and have joy, and see other kids smile and have joy. And whether or not we think they sound top of the line excellent, the parents and the kids are so happy. And so, you know, it's also about how you measure success. You know, do I have a pristine sound that you would hear in an English boy choir chapel? No, I don't. That's not what my groups sound like. But they sound relevant. They sound natural. They sound excited. They love what they're doing. They understand what they're doing. And they're getting better and growing in community and in musicianship. And for me, that's inclusive. For me, that's growing our art, because I have kids that have no business being in choir, had no want to be in choir, that love being in this one.
Right, yeah. And it seems to me like the groups who are at the top of the food chain in terms of quality, they actually couldn't exist without a whole bunch of other groups who are allowing people to go through that training process and to become better singers and better musicians, right? And so, and I don't want to, it's not, yeah, I don't want to offend anybody, and it's not a parasitic relationship, but the fact is that unless they had a large group of other choirs, they simply couldn't exist because there wouldn't be the people with the skills.
Correct. And also, it sort of depends on how you define quality. I've been looking at a lot of words. We're in the process right now this year of rewriting our mission statement. Now that we're really up and running and we're very clear on what we want that to be, we're taking that and workshopping it in terms of the words. And I'm defining words like success and quality, because I would argue that the performances that we put on are quality performances.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you got to agree with that. And if people are enjoying it, then it's quality.
Exactly. So it's all dependent on how you define some of these terms. How do you define successful? If it just depends on who you are and what you want for your organization. But I think as artistic directors and as artists, we need to take a step back and make sure that we agree with what we're doing and we know why we're doing it. If we're doing it because it's always been done that way, we need to take a closer look. And then maybe we'll come to the conclusion of we still want to do it that way. And that's fine. But don't just do it blindly because it's always been done that way.
For sure. And I think technical perfection is not the same thing as quality, right? If you take the perspective of the people involved, both on if they're watching, so the audience and the participants, I know a lot of people who kind of destroyed themselves against the rocks of technical perfection. And that is not the easiest thing, and it makes people do irrational things from time to time. So I get it. I think that you're measuring it correctly. The one thing that I'm aware of about you guys that the only thing I know that is a non-inclusive is that it's capped at grade 12, right? And I know you make that decision for a good reason. So we can talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Right now it is grades K through 12. I would love to have a young adult option in the future. Right now we're just in a spot where we can't possibly do more. We're growing so much with what we have. I actually had on the docket this year that I was going to start a community chorus through it. And I was dead set on doing it in June, dead set on doing it in July, and August hit and everything started falling together for SSCC. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I have to make sure that I can do what I said I'm going to do before I add more to my plate, and that I can do what I said I'm going to do well. At this point, we don't have too many alumni that are still around in the area. And so right now it's K through 12. We hope to do things slightly differently in the future and have another option, but just due to time and finances, I just don't think it's best to spread ourselves too thin. We started a new satellite location last year. We have a new satellite location in partnership with the local state university and their music education program starting this year. So that's 2 years in a row. We're doing 2 new satellites, and it's just a lot. And I'm ready to say, okay, we've done our growth. Now let's build it where we've made it.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually very wise, right? Not to have an everything all at once approach to growth, because you got to know what your capacity is and how fast you can scale and all of that. So it makes sense. I hope you do start a young adult group in the future. Now, a couple of times in this interview, I've been talking about this 2-year gap that you had. Now, a lot of groups would call what they did a 2-year gap, even though they continued to meet over Zoom, or they were doing something. And I know your group actually just decided not to do that, at least for a period of time. And that wasn't everybody's choice. And I'd love to hear why you made that choice and how it went for you.
Absolutely. So we, when everything shut down in 2020, I did some Zoom meetings with some kids. My intermediate choir did some YouTube lessons. The teachers did some YouTube lessons, but for the most part, we kind of just slowed it down. And in the summer of 2020, we did a super spaced out, super far apart summer camp that was a little funky, but we did it.
Yeah.
And then in the fall of 2020, we did, for each group, we did like an online shortened semester little deal, which was great. I actually had the opportunity to do a project with Maura Smiley, and we did one of her pieces, and she actually sang the solo alongside some of my kids, which was really neat. And we collaborated with Ryan Main and the youth chorus of Kansas City, children's chorus from Ohio, children's group from California, a bunch of different people, and a professional a cappella group as well. So we were able to do her piece Rise to It Now. And we also did a couple of social nights where we took all the kids from the youth choirs and we put them in different breakout rooms, and they got to hang and meet each other. And that was all well and good. But we got to the spring of 2021, and I looked at my organization and I saw exhausted parents, exhausted students, and exhausted teachers. And what we sort of live by at South Shore Children's Chorus is the people are the priority. The individual is the priority. Music is the vessel. Excellence is the byproduct.
Mm-hmm.
But step one is the individuals and the people are the priority. And when I looked at my people, I saw exhaustion. They didn't want to be on the screen anymore. They wanted to go outside. They wanted to play soccer. They wanted to do anything except sit in front of a screen. So I said, okay, we're done. We're just going to go dark for the semester. And, I'm here if anybody needs anything, but, we're sitting in front of a computer isn't going to help you anymore. It might actually hurt. So we're just going to call it quits. And then we had a fabulous summer camp, summer of 2021, because it was 2 weeks before the Delta variant.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we ended up having totally unmasked camp, and it was great. And it was fabulous because everybody was like, we're going back to school in the fall and everything's going to be normal again and blah, 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 blah. And then, so we had a fabulous summer camp, and then Delta variant hit. But I said to my staff, I was like, we're not doing virtual programming. We're doing in-person programming, and we're going to make it work. And if we have to space, great. If we have to wear masks, great. If we have to give people a choice, fine. But what we're not going to do is virtual. It just doesn't work. And it's not what we're going to do. And we went that last year, we rehearsed in person the entire year. After Omicron was done, masks were optional. Mm-hmm. We had no super spreader events. And we went from 60 students to 130 students just last year. So we more than doubled our student base.
Yeah.
It's a great example, if you think about it, of what we said earlier, which is that, like every board meeting, you have a hard decision to make, and this was a very hard decision, I would imagine, but your values give you the answer, right? What's the right answer?
Exactly. The people are and our kids are really good about choice. We still have some staff members and some kids that still today decide to wear masks inside. That's okay. That's your prerogative. I told my students all last year, your mask is like your sweatshirt. If you are cold, you put on your sweatshirt. That has to do with you. That doesn't have to do with me. My sweatshirt and my body is for me. And so I wouldn't make fun of you for putting on your sweatshirt. I'm not going to make fun of you for putting on your mask or taking off your mask. It's your level of comfort. It's your temperature. And, Mm-hmm. That went over really well. And we didn't really have parents. I mean, there are very few parents that wouldn't have come back. We were fine. We were fine. We didn't do a lot, but we were fine. And actually grew from it. And so that was a really important part of our story last year.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, you're just finding every possible way to say yes to people, to be musical.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
And people watching at home, if you have tips about starting a choir, we'd love to hear what you have to say as well, so write them down in the comments. So now, finally, where can people go to learn more about the South Shore Children's Chorus?
Well, we have our website, southshorechildren'schorus.org. We're also very active on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm really working on TikTok. We have a YouTube channel, South Shore Children's Chorus, where you can find our past performances. I talk a lot about this on my podcast, Choral Connectivity, A People First Approach to Singing. And I also have written some blogs in the past. So if you kind of Google me or Google South Shore Children's Chorus, it will all sort of pop up right there for you, and you can learn a little bit more and or reach out to me if you have any questions through email or Facebook.
Super, and we're going to put links to those things down in the description under the video as well to make it a little easier for people. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tom. Love talking to you as well.
All right, take care. And remember that if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to bless the YouTube algorithm. And we're going to do one every week, and so if you want to see more of this, then subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you for watching.